The coronavirus pandemic sparked a dramatic increase in homeschooling across the nation and really around the world. The trend of parents opting to go into full homeschool mode even caught the attention of the Associated Press, which published an article a year ago titled, quote, "Sparked by Pandemic Fallout, Homeschooling Surges Across the U.S." Some researchers at the time predicted the number of parents homeschooling would decrease significantly after the schools fully opened, but it appears the percentage has remained quite stable. So if you're currently homeschooling, know that you are part of a growing movement. And if you're thinking about it, well, my next guest has some insights that may be helpful to you. Joining me now is Jim Mason, president of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Jim, welcome to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You've been in this homeschooling game for a long time. Based on that perspective, how do you see the pandemic and the events of the last couple of years impacting homeschooling in America?
Well, as you mentioned, a lot of people began homeschooling because of the pandemic, when everybody was staying home, including children and parents. And the biggest effect is that a lot of people who kind of chose homeschooling for reasons other than education discovered that they really liked it, that they really enjoyed having their kids with them and to be present during those learning moments. So we're seeing a lot of people stick with homeschooling that may not have even started if it hadn't been for the pandemic.
Jim, how many of those people who started during the pandemic have continued?
That's a really good question, and the data is kind of just now coming in. Sometime in the middle of the pandemic, the Census Bureau started keeping track of households that had homeschooled children. And about this time last year, it was 11% of households had at least one child homeschooling. And the data just out this month shows that it's about 9%. Now, a lot of people are just entering the school year, so in the coming weeks and months, we'll learn more about how many stuck with it, but it appears that quite a few did.
Now, a lot of people were schooling at home because that was the only option that they had. And many were still trying to remote learn using their local classroom and oftentimes their public school. Has the definition of homeschool changed in any of this? And is any of that influencing our perception that homeschooling has changed? Or is this exclusively a function of people who have just withdrawn from the government system and now they're educating at home?
Well, the definition of homeschooling is kind of a fluid thing. People who teach their kids at home, think of themselves as homeschooling almost, for sure. We advocate for a version of homeschooling that's privately funded, private homeschooling. What the pandemic did, though, was it unleashed a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and a lot of new innovative approaches to education, even kind of private approaches to teaching your own kids. So learning pods and things like that were not really a thing before the pandemic. So a lot of, and we at Homeschool Legal Defense really support private options where parents are really directly involved in the education of their children. And some of those things look a little different today.
Yeah. Now, a lot of parents who might be watching today, they love the idea of homeschool, but they feel totally unequipped themselves to do it. They just feel like, that's for other people. I can't pull this off. What would you say to them?
I would say if you're interested and dedicated, that you would be surprised at just how able you are to do it. Almost everyone I know back in the day began homeschooling with a similar attitude, even those who are very interested and committed to it. My wife and I, for example, 30 years ago said, well, we'll try this for a year and see how it goes. And once you get started, it's not as hard as you think, especially if you're really committed to it. And just the joy that you get from doing it will sustain you in those outer years. So we ended up homeschooling 7 children from start to finish, but we started out trying it 1 year at a time.
Yeah. And Jim, tell us a bit more than that. You obviously have a lot of experience with this, 7 children. What would you say are the benefits of homeschooling?
Oh, gosh, probably the single most important benefit is the relationships you develop with your children. I encourage people not to think of homeschooling as kind of a little public school at home, but just having your kids be around you all day long, and relationships with siblings and neighbors and others in your social, church groups and the like. It's really the biggest benefit from my perspective is my 7 children and my wife and I are just as close as you could be. I have 7 adult children now, and the siblings all really care for each other a lot, as well as their mom and dad. And they've all done fine educationally too, and pursuing, good careers. But those relationships are hard to replace.
Yeah, that is the truth. And I think that's the hope of every parent, is that their kids will love each other and the family when they are adults. But Jim, very quickly, in about 30 seconds, where would you send parents who are looking for more information, more resources, who may want to do this for themselves?
Our website at Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, is just a treasure trove of all kinds of information, how to get started, helpful webinars on a vast array of topics, lots of help getting started legally, so you make sure you follow your state's laws to avoid difficulties. That's hslda.org. And we have getting started helps, all sorts of things.
Jim Mason, thank you so much for your time. It's hslda.org. Check it out.